Have you tried the new Doom game? What a statement on fighting your inner demons. Oh, I don't go in for that intellectualist stuff. Give me a rural scene in Stardew Valley any day of the week. You know you're overlooking the best of the best. Which one? You don't know? Working class man drawn into a fight between nobility drags his brother halfway across the kingdom? Ah, Mario. How much longer will the committee overlook that underrated Italian plumber? It's a silly question, isn't it? Could a video game win the Pulitzer Prize? Pulitzer Prizes are for journalists, for great literary works, for breakthrough reporting. And it's true, those are traditionally the winners of the Pulitzer Prize. But there are exceptions. According to the Pulitzer website, eligibility for any work is determined on a case-by-case basis by the Pulitzer Prize judges. So yes, a video game could win a Pulitzer Prize. But what would that look like? The prize is normally the highest honor in print journalism, literary achievement, or musical composition. There are a bunch of different categories, but video games really only qualify for two: drama and fiction. So to win, a video game has to be a literary achievement. A quick lookup states that literary works demonstrate artistic merit, focusing on style, character development, and thematic exploration over plot, and each are considered serious art by critics. This definition basically eliminates all video games ever released. Games are made with gameplay in mind first and foremost, often reshaping the plot around the mechanics. A lot of gamers don't want character development, they want the game. So, people who produce games have learned to avoid cutscenes and focus on the action. The way gamers play games has effectively eliminated the medium's chance for a Pulitzer at this time. Plus, who wants to play a game that puts you in the worst kind of ethical dilemmas and asks you to genuinely engage with it? It's enough to give you an ulcer. Games are not the only medium that was at one point perceived as non-artistic. I mentioned there have been a couple exceptions to the rules of the Pulitzer Prize in the past. Well, there's one other medium that comes to mind. It was invented in the late 1800s, and after 50 years of maturation earned its first Pulitzer in the 1930s. The musical. It began with Of Thee I Sing, and after that, musicals averaged a Pulitzer about once every 10 years. Most of them won based on artistic merit. They covered significant historical moments and deep thematic elements. In 2010, Next to Normal won the Pulitzer for a rock opera about mental health care in the United States. In 2016, Hamilton won, which makes sense. The Pulitzer is a bit like the Oscar. Being popular helps, but winning the award is all about being artistically significant. But there is one standout among all the musicals that have ever won a Pulitzer. In 1944, Oklahoma was awarded a special dispensation outside the normal range of awards. You see, until Oklahoma, the music written in musicals was sort of written adjacent to the plot. You'd have plot for a while, and then you'd sing a fun song, and then you'd resume the plot. In Oklahoma, the songs were interwoven into the plot, and it reinvented how musicals tell stories. We need to be honest about the state of video games. It's a young medium. The first ever video game came out in 1958, and realistically, video games weren't a thing until the 1980s. 45 years. Younger than when musicals earned their first prize. It's an art form that still has years of maturation to undergo. But if we follow the same line as musicals, games have two paths to the Pulitzer. Path 1 is for a deeply thematic, resonant game that takes on hard political topics and gives some deep insight into life. It's games that make you think. Games that make you put down the controller and face how you live your own life. We don't have a game that's won the Pulitzer, so it's hard to point to a perfect example. But there are a few that kinda get close. This War of Mine places players in the middle of the Sarajevo siege and challenges them to survive day to day, to make tough choices surrounded by other people who are trying to do the same. Forbidden City is a time loop game about a city that dies if a single person sins. It forces players to explore questions like, what is sin, what is crime, and what is justice? The end of the game kinda loses the heavy themes and ends in a classic big action face-off, so no Pulitzer there. But there is another option. Make a game that reinvents the genre, that shows future game makers that gameplay and story should be commingled. One of the earliest examples is Portal. They embedded the story into the environment. They leaned into a very minimal direction, letting only a few words from GLaDOS tell you everything you needed to know about the story. You will be baked, and then there will be cake. In 2013, Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons was released. It has players control two brothers at the same time, each with one of the two analog sticks, as they embark on an epic adventure. But when the brothers split up, and you have to play only as one of the two, it feels a bit like you've lost a limb. A more recent release is Spiritfarer. It's a cartoonish game where you take on the role of the ferryman for the undead. In this one, the game builds out mechanics that replicate the feeling and behaviors of grief. You make room for a person on your ship, and when they're gone, you're left with a hole in your heart that's shaped just like them. I don't think any video game has come close to qualifying for the Pulitzer. Both reinventing gameplay and writing a deeply thematic game while still getting people to play it is an almost impossible task. But for my money, if there was any game that had a chance, any one game with the bones of a Pulitzer winner, I'd say it's Papers, Please. Papers, Please tells the story of a border-crossing agent in Arstatska. Nearly the entire game takes place in your little border agent booth. Visitors hand you passports and their papers, and you review them. Your whole task in the game is to decide, are they approved, denied, or detained? As the game goes on, conflicts with neighboring countries mean immigration laws change day by day. Requirements for approval change day by day. You see people desperate to get through. An old man who keeps on trying to make better and better fraud passports. Violence as an extension of the neighboring conflicts. And increasingly, an intrusive violation of people's privacy that you as the border agent have to do. Of course, you're just an agent, and all you can do is try to get from one day to the next without making a mistake. It's a beautiful marriage of gameplay and storytelling. You don't need to read a newspaper about the conflicts with Arstatska's neighbors. You just got an order that said detain anyone with these passports. When you see someone crying and pleading to get out of the country, your heart hurts. And you have to ask yourself if you're willing to risk your own life for someone else's benefit. To some degree, the game hits every target, furthering how video games work and diving into deep thematic ideas. So why didn't it? Why didn't it win the prize? I think if we could go back and rewrite the game a little, pivot it to a more literary bent, it might have. If instead of the fictional country of Arstatska, the game maker Lucas Pope had set the game in a real place from a real historical event, it would have had a lot more weight. We probably needed more tearjerker moments, more space in the game for introspection, more opportunities for our character, the border agent, to exercise independence, even if it risks their own career. Basically, just elevate what's already there. Papers, Please lays out a model, and video games only need a few more years to get to that artistic place. and for the people who respect video games as an art form to finally have a voice. It's telling that most of the examples I listed of potential winners were all indie games. It's a bit like the Oscars. The game that finally pulls it off is going to be the kind of game that's critically acclaimed and panned by the general public. And AAA studios are not in the business of being panned by the general public. They're in the business of microtransactions and big-budget crowd pleasers, not artistic, experimental art pieces. The question of could a video game win a Pulitzer, in my opinion, is yes. The only questions now are when and who. And it'll be a who. It'll be someone like Lucas Pope, an individual with a sharp and specific vision in mind. Nothing made by committee. So hold on to hope. Someday in the next decade or two, video games might just see the sprouting of our own elite, of our own artsy crowd in search of the next Pulitzer winner. I don't know how much I'm looking forward to that, but I am excited to see the medium pushed further and further into the realm of art. Thank you for watching.